And good afternoon, everyone. This is Jason Horsch, owner of Xanadu Gallery. I'd like to welcome you to another podcast from Xanadu Gallery. Today is Tuesday, September 4th, 2012. And our topic today is the importance of artistic consistency. As we begin the broadcast, as usual, I'd like to just briefly go over some of the logistics of participation in the broadcast. As you all know, this is an interactive format, and so you're going to be able to participate in several ways. You'll be able to watch the slideshow presentation and listen as well. You'll also, most importantly, be able to ask questions. There are two ways that you can ask questions. You'll notice on the right-hand side of your screen there is a control box that allows you to interact. One of the boxes within that is the question box. Anything that you type in there, I will be able to see and respond to. And then also, you can ask questions audibly if you have a microphone attached to your computer. And if the tech gods smile on us and it happens to be connected properly, tends to only work about 50% of the time for some reason. But at the end of the broadcast, I will go ahead and open up for audible questions. And at that time, you can let me know that you'd like to participate audibly by clicking on the yellow hand icon. In essence, you're raising your hand, and that allows me to then bring you in audibly to the conversation. Also, I am recording this session, so anything that you miss will be available for download within the next couple days on the blog. I'd also like to just briefly go over an outline of this evening's discussion on consistency. This evening will be I'll just make a brief presentation on consistency and some of my thoughts related to a recent blog post that I did on the topic. Then I want to show a few examples, kind of a picture being worth 1,000 words, but look at some artists who I feel do a good job of presenting consistency. And then also when I sent out the invitation for this podcast, I invited you to submit images to my Facebook page, where if you're brave enough, I can take just a few minutes to critique your consistency, and I will say that those of you that did submit, thank you for doing that. Most of you were very consistent, so I will look forward to doing that. And then most importantly, I'd like to open up at the end for a discussion and Q&A period where we can discuss consistency. So let's begin just briefly by recapping my blog post recently. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read that. It's on red.blog.com, and really it was the inspiration for doing this podcast because it generated so much discussion both on the blog, and then I've had numerous email conversations subsequently, and I thought that it would be beneficial for us all to be able to kind of join into that conversation. But what I'm going to be sharing with you on consistency today comes from my experience as a gallery owner. And just briefly to go over a little bit of that for those of you who don't know, I've owned Xanadu Gallery for over 10 years now. Prior to that, I worked in a large gallery here in Scottsdale, Arizona for about 7 years. So I've been in the business nearing 20 years, and over that time I've had the opportunity to work with many excellent artists, and consistency is certainly one of the factors that I have seen at play in many of these artists' careers. And I feel that consistency is such an important part of long-term commercial success for an artist, and we're going to be discussing a little bit that success, that I feel it's kind of one of the building blocks of an artist's career. I'll also mention that inconsistency has really been a deterrent in many instances to me agreeing to take on a new artist's work. And as I mentioned in the blog post, this is I understand a real challenge for many artists to think about and deal with this issue of consistency. Not all artists, of course. Many artists just come by it almost naturally. But I sense among many artists this feeling that, I just don't want to become pigeonholed into some very tightly defined style where I don't have any room to explore, move, change, grow. I want to explore. I want to do different things. And I, again, as a gallery owner, can completely understand that and feel that that is, as an artist, you do have that liberty to try new things and experiment. And in fact, I encourage artists early in their careers as they're trying to find their voice to experiment pretty broadly. It's very difficult to find what you're most passionate about unless you've taken the opportunity to try new things and explored, and that's how you begin that process. But over time, as you're starting to think more and more about building a following of collectors for your work, of building relationships with galleries, and really reinforcing and building your brand, it becomes important to start to find focus in your work. And that's really what we're going to be talking about. It's not that you're going to become trapped and be stuck doing the same piece of art over and over and over again for the rest of your career. It's just that we want to be able to find that focus that will allow your collectors and your galleries to really consistently identify with your work and be able to recognize the work as yours. I mentioned in the blog post an artist who came into the gallery a number of years ago, and I've had many such encounters. This artist presented a portfolio to me that was very extensive and included, dozens and dozens of images, and in essence, it was kind of a retrospective of her career. She was, advanced in terms of maturity. I'm trying to find a way to say that being diplomatic without saying a little bit older. But she had been around for a while, and over the course of her career, it looked like she had literally tried a little bit of everything. She had some pieces that were very reminiscent of cave paintings, all the way through impressionistic and Renaissance art, portraiture, figurative work, abstract work, impressionism, just the whole gamut. And looking at this work, it was hard to know exactly what she was trying to accomplish in talking to me, because had I chosen to represent her, I wouldn't even have known where to begin in terms of, okay, what will I be representing? What work will I be taking on? And I mentioned to her that, your work certainly is diverse, and she took that, I think, as more of a compliment than I might have intended it. While, again, it's fine to have that diversity over your career, when it comes time to present your work to a gallery, I maintain that it's important to edit your work down to a consistent body of work so that the gallery knows what they're looking at. And the reason I feel that is so important is that as a gallery owner, as I'm looking at an artist's work and considering whether I'm going to represent them, while certainly my first reaction to the work is going to be almost a kind of primal, gut reaction to the work. Do I like it? Does it strike me? Is it powerful? Is it is it emotive? Is this work that is going to be of interest to me and something that I can get excited about? And is it going to be something that will attract my collectors? That's the first reaction. And after that, if I feel all of those things and I'm excited about the work that I'm seeing, I then have to shift gears just a little bit and look at the work more objectively and think of it as a potential investment on my part. And really that is exactly what it's going to become. As I take an artist on, it's not just something that I can do without thinking about it, because I am going to be making a considerable investment in that artist's work. I'll be investing wall space or pedestal space, display space, and of course retail gallery space has become very expensive over the years, so that is a very literal investment that I'll be making. I'm also going to be investing the efforts and focus of my sales staff, their time and promotional efforts. I'm going to be investing advertising dollars, design dollars in marketing and promoting that artist's work. And so, you know, even to just take an artist in the door, I'm going to be making that large investment, and I've got to feel fairly confident that over the course of the next several years, I'm going to be able to recoup that investment and see a profit. You know, and I know that all of these terms almost feel to some of us as antithetical. Boy, can you really talk about art in such a business-like way? I mean, you know, art is sacrosanct. It's something apart from that. And I feel it's important for an artist to kind of feel that way, that art is something that is a higher calling in some ways. As a gallery owner, I have to kind of come down to earth a little bit more and realize that, you know, boy, if I don't keep those sales going and I don't do my best to make good investments, pretty simply my doors are not going to be open, and none of us are going to have the opportunity to share the art or sell it or make a living at what we're doing. And so I do have to just come at it in a you know, somewhat emotionless, business-like way. And so if an artist presents a portfolio to me that is you know, just scattered and doesn't show this consistency that we're going to be talking about, my concern will automatically be, boy, I may like some of what I'm seeing here, and my collectors may like it, and you know, there may be 2 or 3 pieces here that I just feel are spectacular. But boy, even if I get those pieces and sell them, my concern is then going to be, will I be able to get more of the work? Am I going to be able to show more of this artist's work that is going to be consistent with these 2 or 3 great pieces? And you know, selling 2 or 3 pieces for an artist is great, but over the long term, I'm going to be needing to sell, you know, dozens and hundreds and you know, several hundred pieces over the course of my relationship with the artist. And so I've got to feel that there is a pathway to the success that we're both looking for in showing the work. Again, that's the goal in a gallery like mine. We're not a museum, you know, some kind of academic institution. We're here to sell art, and so we've got to make decisions that are going to be beneficial for both us. We're in a partnership with the artists that we're working with. And so to that end, I certainly am looking for consistency. And so the next question becomes, great, what is consistency? I'm going to go for the simple first, and let's just go straight to the dictionary for a definition of consistency. Dictionary.com defines consistency as steadfast adherence to the same principles, course, form, etc., or agreement, harmony, or compatibility, especially correspondence or uniformity among the parts of a complex thing. I think that's an interesting that second definition is very interesting. If you think of your overall body of work as this complex thing that they're talking about, then what we're looking for are individual pieces of art that share this harmony and uniformity. It's not that they're identical, but we're just looking for that kind of correspondence that ties it all together. Wikipedia defined it as, in logic, a consistent theory is one that does not contain a contradiction. Kind of coming at it from a mathematical perspective. I think that's also very interesting. Again, not that everything's identical, but that there's just no absolute and utter contradiction in your body of work. So that's a good place to start. So the question that's often put to me then is, okay, Jason, you say that it's important to find consistency, but what does that mean? Does that mean that my subject matter has to all be exactly the same? If I'm a landscape painter, I can only paint one particular landscape. If I'm a floral painter, I can only ever do florals, even better, only roses. You know, if I'm an abstract painter, do I need to stick to similar subject matter? You know, and my response to that is that for every artist, there's going to be a little bit different definition of what consistency means to them. It could be any one of these things, and let me pull up my little list here. Theme can certainly be a starting point. If you can find a narrative theme in your work that ties it all together. And we're going to see some examples of that as we're reviewing artists' pieces that were submitted to us. Could be the style that creates the consistency, and I work with several artists who may have some variety in terms of their subject matter and the approach to that subject matter, but their style is so strong that it ties it together and creates that consistency. Could be your subject matter. Certainly an artist who is very dedicated to a particular subject and is very consistent in creating only work that depicts that subject is going to be very consistent. And it could be the presentation of the work, kind of giving people a visual cue that helps tie it all together. In some ways, that last one, presentation, is the direction that I would go, were I trying to maybe tie together some work that may have some inconsistencies. Maybe you have done some landscapes and some more contemporary abstract work. Maybe your style is somewhat similar, but by presenting the work in a similar way, you can start to find some consistency. Let me just show a few examples. And again, these are examples that I showed in the blog post. These are artists that I work with, and I think it bears just a little bit of consideration on each one of these artists and will help illustrate a little bit more what this consistency is. The first artist is Guy Jammet, who many of you might know his work. He's an artist out of Santa Fe, originally from Colombia. Guy Jammet is from a large family. A lot of his work is about relationships. You can see that in looking at the examples of the work that I've shown you here. And you look at this and you say, okay, on the left I've got a sculpture. On the right, I have an oil painting. Well, there's some inconsistency right there. Those are completely different media, a complete different approach to the creation. But looking at his work, you see, well, that difference is overcome by the consistency in his subject matter and the theme. Again, the relationships, and obviously it's the figurative work that is treated in a stylistic way. And the result of this consistency in theme is that when a potential buyer walks into my gallery and sees Guy Jammet's work from across the room, they can instantly identify that work as belonging to this one artist, whether it's a painting or a sculpture or a wall relief. I just rarely will ever even have someone ask the question, is this by the same artist? Because it's just so apparent in terms of style, subject matter, and theme that the work is all done by one artist, and that is what you want to be aiming for. Again, in terms of building success long term with a gallery and with collectors. Another example is another artist that I work with, Lori Acott. She's a sculptor. She does have some variety in media. She does bronze castings. She does ceramic pieces, clay pieces. Again, though, you see that she's created a unique look to her work in terms of styling. It's the elongated figures. In terms of the actual work itself, there's some of the crackling. That piece on the right particularly shows it, and that is a clay piece. But if you look at the bronze on the left, she's carried that same kind of crackling into the sculpture, and all of those effects come together to create a very singular kind of look. Now, in the middle, you see the horse, and even though our subject matter is different, and even a little bit the mood is a little different in that piece. Again, the figure's elongated. There's some of that crackling going on, and again, you see the figurative or the equine work that she's done, and there's very little doubt that you're looking at work by a single artist. Jeannie Thorne, another artist that I work with. I almost feel like I don't even need to say anything about her work because it's so consistent. She comes she has some architectural background and obviously has a very strong sense of design and material. So she does these steel welded pieces, plate steel and different materials, incorporates often stone, and kind of the angular design, the finishes, again, make it just abundantly clear to someone that they're looking at work by the same artist. Now, she has a variety of scales, and she'll use different materials, but because it all comes back to this same kind of strong design sense and overall the same sensibility in terms of how the pieces are put together and the scale of the work, it's very easy to see that it belongs to her. And then I'll also point to an artist who maybe has a little more diversity in terms of subject matter as my father. This is the work of John Horsch, who happens to be my father. And he is a landscape painter primarily, although he does some still lifes. He does some wildflower work. You're seeing a couple of diverse examples here. One's a desert landscape. One is a kind of more of a northwest aspen landscape. He has this diversity in subject matter, and one thing that you can't see here because you don't see the full presentation is that it is his presentation that ultimately helps tie the work together. He paints on large box-stretched canvases and leaves about a 3/4 inch white border around the work, and that presentation has really helped him create consistency in his work, even though he has that diversity in style. Again, for many artists who may struggle a little bit with having a broad-ranging interest, finding the consistent presentation can really help bring that work together. So find, if you frame your work, find frames that are similar in terms of the molding and the weight of the frame. Even better if it can be an identical frame for all or most of the work. And then Dave Newman is another great example, another artist that I represent, a contemporary Route 66 style. And you can see that his work is collage and mixed media. The piece on the right is an actual guitar that he's taken and artified it, so to speak, where he's collaged his work to it, old magazine clippings, photographs that he's taken on his travels on old Route 66 or through the Old West. And again, this work creates a very consistent, strong style. It's interesting. His buyers, I tend to, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. If they're interested in his work, they're probably not going to be interested in some of the other work that I carry. It attracts a very distinctive kind of collector. I think this is also something that happens to an artist who creates a strong, consistent style, is that they get a real following for their work, and they're going to tend to attract certain types of buyers. And so certainly that's something you want to be looking for in your own work is, am I attracting buyers that share common interests or share perhaps have similar demographic backgrounds? You can kind of look at this from both directions. How's my work similar and how are my buyers similar? And those can inform one another and help you work towards stronger consistency. Now, several years ago, this artist, Dave Newman, came into the gallery with some sculptural work that he was doing. He kind of similar in concept in the sense that Dave does a lot of traveling and collecting various items, Americana and whatnot from around the country. But in those travels, he's also collecting three-dimensional items. And so his idea was to create some sculptural pieces from found objects, and in collaboration with another artist in his area, he started putting these pieces together, designing them, and then having them welded. And so he brought some of these pieces into the gallery, and I thought they were just fascinating pieces, really interesting work. But it was interesting that we actually did not do very well with these sculptural pieces, and I don't know, Dave may have found markets for them, and I guess I haven't really talked to him about it, but he may have sold them very well. But for us, at least, the work was different enough from kind of what we've built a following for his work that we didn't find the interest amongst our buyers in this new type of work. And you can see that it's a little bit of a stretch to go from the collage, very colorful, vibrant work that you're seeing here to these sculptures, that are more monochromatic and very interesting, but very different. And so that was just kind of an interesting experiment in inconsistency for us, where we do very well with Dave's kind of his bread and butter work, so to speak. But he tried this new subject matter and new style, and it didn't work as well for us. Again, I can completely understand an artist's interest in trying new things and experimenting. And as Dave and I conversed about this new work, I encouraged him to bring his pieces and let's give it a try, because I had such a great track record with him and his work, and I liked what I was seeing. But it just didn't work out for us, and the more consistent work has been also more consistent in terms of selling. Now let's take a look just briefly at some of the work that was submitted on my Facebook page. In my invitation to this broadcast, I asked you to upload up to 4 images just for review in terms of consistency. And I guess maybe I was hoping that I'd get a few samples of work that showed some real inconsistency. I didn't get any of that. I felt like almost all of the artists who submitted had a pretty good sense of consistency. So let's just briefly take a look at that. This work is by Ted Lawson. And boy, both in terms of subject matter, it's urban, it's big city, it's somewhat loose and a little bit contemporary in terms of its treatment of color. Looking at this work, you'd have no difficulty putting all 4 of these pieces together on a gallery wall, as long as they were presented in a consistent way and presenting those to clients. And someone who's interested in the the kind of big city New York scene is also going to be interested in a downtown Paris scene in the lower right. I don't see any issues of consistency there. Now another artist. Pull this one up, Joy Hanser. This is kind of an interesting, I thought. Joy, it appears, has developed an interesting technique where you look at her paintings and it seems that you're looking through a rainy window. In some ways this is, boy, the right word is not going to come to me here, but this technique and then applying it across your work creates a really strong and interesting angle for the work. Obviously, the scenes are going to tend to be more toward the the rainy, moody, atmospheric scene. But that gimmick almost that has such a negative connotation. I don't mean it in a negative way at all. But this concept of looking at the work and seeing the rain splattered window creates a real hook. That's the word I'm going to use. It's a hook for her buyers. They're going to recognize the work as hers because she's developed this very interesting perspective of looking through the rainy window, and something that we can all obviously identify with. Those of us in Arizona maybe a little bit less than the rest of you, but we can understand where she's coming from. Another artist, Joan Jones. Now, it's a little bit difficult looking at Joan's work to be certain about the consistency, because I'm not seeing the whole picture in terms of what's the scale of these pieces, how are they framed, presentation. I might have some concerns that this is pushing the kind of the boundaries of consistency. Yes, it's all figurative. But I can see some very distinctive stylistic differences between, as you move from the piece on the left which feels much more contemporary and almost abstract, to the lower centerpiece where it feels a little bit more realistic, and then the studies and sketches. Again, you can probably make a pretty good argument that well, my work is figurative, and you know, I'm just approaching the figure in a number of different ways. But if I were starting to put together a portfolio, I might see, looking at this work, that I have three very distinct bodies of work going here, and I might want to be building you know, an entire portfolio of work that is more abstract and more like the piece in the upper left, compared to some of the other pieces, and it might be worthwhile to you know, to create distinct and different bodies of work and distinct and different portfolios. I will mention, you know, kind of that brings to mind some artists that I have worked with. I have an artist that I've worked with over the years who does two fairly distinctive styles of work, at least two different styles. And her approach to this question has been to, in an effort not to confuse her collectors, to really separate these different bodies of work. And so she has separate portfolios for the different bodies of work. One is much more contemporary, structural, almost architectural, and abstract. The other work is more landscape work, and she's created separate portfolios for the work, separate websites, and she uses a pseudonym with one body of work because she just doesn't want to confuse her collectors as they look at the work and have them wonder, okay, you know, what is this artist going to be famous for? What are they most passionate about? You know, that's the kind of doubt that we don't want to introduce into a potential buyer's mind. So her approach has been to completely separate those bodies of work and keep them apart. Let's see, I think I've got one more slide here. Oh yes, here's this is Ruth Solar's work, and again, I feel like even though we have some variety in terms of subject matter, even then we're looking at what would appear to be Western subject matter, Western United States, kind of you get the sense of the open sky and the expansive spaces. Her colors are very strong and consistent, bold. Probably of these four pieces, the piece in the upper right, the cowboys on horseback, that one to me feels a little less consistent just in terms of style, and I almost have to wonder if it was either created before or after these other three pieces, because I do see a much stronger consistency in the two landscapes and the dancing scene in the lower right than maybe that one. But even so, again, because of the theme and the subject matter, I wouldn't feel any you know, there are any huge red flags going off with these four pieces. Now there are several caveats that I wanted to mention, and I already touched on these. The first is that early in an artist's career, it is a time of exploration and experimentation. I would never want to get in the way of an artist doing that, and obviously every artist works at a different pace in terms of the arc of their career. You know, some artists may need to explore for 4 or 5 years, some it might be 10, 15, 20 years, and again, that's fine. It's just when it's time for us to start thinking about, you know, I'm ready to really pursue gallery and commercial success, that I want to be focused in on pursuing this consistency relentlessly. And having said that, I mentioned in the blog post that you know, there's nothing to say that you can't continue to experiment, try new things, but those might be personal projects for you, things that you do on the side that aren't necessarily intended to be introduced to your galleries or to your collectors. You know, maybe you're doing, I think the number I mentioned in the blog post was maybe you're doing 20 pieces, and of those 20 pieces, 19 of them are going to be your consistent, again, your bread and butter kind of work, but the 20th piece is the one that's a freebie that you get to do whatever you want, experiment and try new things. And I again encourage artists to do that. There's real value in stretching, and sometimes those experiments and those things that are different, even though they don't end up being what you're going to be marketing commercially, a lot of times there will be some they might inform the other work that you're doing and create new excitement and energy and just keep you from getting stiff and bored in your work. I also know that artists need to evolve over time. Some of the comments in response to the blog post were, well, if an artist doesn't change over time, their work is dead, and artists have to change and evolve. I absolutely agree with that. Look at any great artist, and you're going to see some real evolution over their lifetime, and sometimes some pretty dramatic and radical changes that occur in the work that they're doing. You would never want to get permanently stuck, but again, you look at most of these artists, and you're going to see that evolution is occurring slowly over time, even though there may be some radical breaks along the way, some real dramatic changes. You look at an Edward Hopper piece or a Van Gogh or any of these other great artists, and you're going to be able to see that thread that runs through all of it that makes you say, yes, this is a Jackson Pollock or a Van Gogh or a Monet. They've created a consistency and a style that is so strongly and distinctly theirs that that all of us, they've become a part of our psyche. We can instantly identify that work by its style, and that only comes if an artist has created some real consistency. So in terms of recommendations, and then I'll start taking your questions, and I can see that a lot of you have entered questions in, and some of you had posted a few before. Just in terms of recommendations, and these are just some quick recommendations. One is that consistency takes practice. Consistency is a skill just like any other. If you feel like you struggle with consistency, I would encourage you to kind of take it to an extreme and say to yourself, you know what, over the next 6 months, I am going to be very focused on a particular subject. Or at the very least, I'm going to be very focused on a particular element of my style, and I am going to make sure that every single piece of art that I create during this period strongly demonstrates and focuses in on this particular element or subject. I read an interesting book not too long ago, and it was, I'm going to forget the title of it, but it was Malcolm Gladwell's book. Many of you may have either read it or heard about it. And he proposes that in order to become an expert or a master of a particular thing, you have to have spent 10,000 hours practicing that thing, whether it be the piano or computer programming. He gives a whole list of examples. Well, I think there's some real parallels that can be created between that and the art that you're creating, and that if you want to become a real master of a particular, a real master of your work, your medium, that constant practice is a real first step in that direction. Yes, thank you. Jan says it's Outliers is the name of the book by Malcolm Gladwell. Thank you for that, Jan. Really an interesting book, by the way, if you haven't read that. Then the other suggestion that I would make is that if you're struggling a little bit, get a second opinion on your work. Have some objective observers look at the work and get some feedback on what they see as your consistencies. What do they see as the common thread? And again, it's not that you're looking for someone to tell you what to do or what direction you have to take. It's simply that sometimes that outside perspective helps you look at your work and say, oh, I didn't even realize that that I was that my style was the consistent element, that my use of color or whatever it is. So whether it be another artist whose work you admire, a colleague who can give you that perspective, a gallery owner, an interior designer, or even better if it could be someone who's bought your work. What was it that initially drew you to my work? What do you see as a common thread in the work? How would you describe my work? Boy, that kind of feedback can be really, really invaluable to you. I'll also mention that, again, in some of the feedback to the blog post, you know, and I really appreciate all of the feedback that was given on this post. I felt like, you know, hopefully I gave some value in the article that I wrote, but I really felt that there was tremendous value in the feedback that all of you put into the post, and some really great perspective on consistency and your various approaches to it. And I also appreciated any perspective that was maybe a little bit different than mine, and several of those were, well, you know, the market shouldn't dictate the kind of art that we create, and you know, an artist can very quickly be smothered or stifled by these kind of requests for consistency from galleries, you know, or from the market, and you got to be true to what you're doing. And I think that to be truly successful, not only commercially as an artist, but aesthetically and you know, just a long-term success, you have to find a kind of balance between all of these things. Yes, it's important to be commercially successful so that you can put food on the table and do what you love doing. But at the end of the day, I completely understand that you don't want to sell out either, in the sense that you know, you don't want to completely paint only what people want. You know, there's certainly been examples of artists who have done that, and you know, it's not my place to criticize those artists. But I think in the long term, you know, an artist is looking not only toward that day-to-day success, but hopefully that their work is going to stand the test of time and be of value to people who encounter it today, tomorrow, and to future generations. And we need to find that balance for each and every one of us. And as a gallery owner, you can ask the artists that I work with. I don't recall ever going to an artist and saying, you know, I need you to paint a saguaro cactus because that's what I can sell, or I need you to create a sculpture of an eagle. I will from time to time have artists come to me and say, you know, do you have any suggestions, or what should I create? And almost invariably my response is going to be, well, what's most exciting you right now? What are you most interested in creating? What are you most passionate about? Because that's what I'm going to be most successful with. You know, while I believe there are some principles that can help us become more successful in marketing and selling your work, at the end of the day, this is not a you know, a formulaic kind of business. You know, you're not creating cogs. We have to make an emotional connection with our buyers, and doing what you're passionate about is going to be the most direct route to accomplish this. And so you know, find your passion and pursue it, and as you're doing that, just start thinking about consistency. What can I do to channel this passion and this excitement that I feel toward my work, and move it in a direction that creates some consistency and focus. Let me take now some of your questions, and again, there are going to be two ways that you can ask questions. One would be to type your question into the question box in your control panel. The other way, if you have a microphone attached to your computer, you can click on the yellow hand icon. I just put everyone's hand down. I wasn't sure if I wanted to make sure that we've got fresh hands up, so to speak. But go ahead if you have a microphone and click on the yellow hand icon, and then I can bring you into the conversation if the technology lines up for us. Let me first take just a couple of the questions that were submitted on the blog in preparation for today. And the first one, this one comes, if I can bring it up on my screen here. Okay. Bear with me just a moment. I'm having a little bit of a technical difficulty here. Okay. This one comes from Peter John Reed, and Peter says, style or reproduction, ? question mark. I see so many artists with a style, and I find I can't tell one painting from the next. Yes, they're all different and often amazing, but so similar to one another that none are memorable. So desperate to find a style, many border on hobby or craft, a formula like a Harlequin romance. They sell well. I'm not opposed to an artist making a decent living any way they can, just galleries holding style out as the holy grail rather than the commercialism it is. And he says not necessarily a bad thing. The great artists of the past didn't often listen to the gallery owners of their day. They found gallery owners to listen to them with an eye for quality rather than the novel. As artists, we need to learn our craft, find our muse, and continue always to grow. Style is the way I talk with paint. I really appreciate that comment, and I think Peter brings out some really good points. You know, and again, it can be a real balancing act, as I just mentioned, between kind of pursuing your integrity and creating what you're passionate about, and finding that balance between, okay, I also have to find what's going to sell. But I think I'm kind of in agreement with Peter's comment in terms of, you know, as a gallery, we're not trying to dictate what the artists are doing. You may find some galleries out there that are more proactive in terms of what they're looking for, what they're expecting from their artists. But I think that we live in such a broad art market with such a diverse group of buyers out there now, and the access to the artwork has become so much more instantaneous, and you have such a broader range of work you can look at. That really you should be pursuing what you're passionate about and creating it, and then going out and finding the market for it, rather than trying to reverse engineer a successful piece of art. So thank you for that question. Let me go to some of the questions that have been typed in. Michael, I would probably butcher your last name, Michael Magruch. I hope I was close on that. He says, consistency comes from creating lots and lots of work and different kinds of work. Your voice will come through. As soon as this happens, you have a consistent and recognizable work. I feel that when you try to shortcut directly to consistency, you often miss the mark. Yeah, boy, I think that that is true as well. And what I'm suggesting here is not that, well, within the next 5 or 6 pieces of art that you create, you could suddenly land on this consistency. Many artists, it will take years and hundreds of pieces of art for them to explore and find that consistency. My suggestion is not that, hey, let's make it happen today, but rather let's at least be thinking about consistency. And when it comes time to present the work to the public or to a gallery, let's, especially at that point, make a conscientious decision that we're going to edit the work down to work that is consistent. That I'm only going to present work that I feel works well together. Let me see if I can bring in an audible question now. I'm going to first go to Lisa Bell. Lisa, are you there, and do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I was listening to your comment and suggestion, and in particular, it was in regards to one of the artists that you were reviewing with us, and you suggested that it was a good idea to possibly, if an artist is doing several genres like portraiture, landscape, still life, floral painting, etc., that it might not be a bad idea to have separate websites. And I just wanted to hear a little more on that idea, because currently, and since 1997, everything resides on one website, and I do all of those different things.
Sure.
Even though I have a very strong style, I'm kind of considering redoing the website and possibly using some new website software out there on the internet.
Sure.
And,
yeah, that's.
So I'd like to hear more about that idea.
Yeah, you know, as I mentioned, that's certainly one option. I wouldn't say that's the first place that I would tell you to go is, you know, well, okay, let's fragment what you're doing and create separate websites and separate portfolios. I think I more would want to illustrate or use that as an illustration of perhaps the importance of finding consistency and the lengths that some artists will go to. I would start first, rather than thinking about, okay, now I need to develop 3 or 4 more websites. I mean, good grief, it's hard enough to keep one website up to date, you know, let alone 2 or 3. I would suggest that you think about, okay, first, what can I do to take my current primary website and maybe edit it down to those artworks that are going to be most consistent. And you can do this in a pretty subtle way. You know, I'm not saying you have to just all of a sudden take all the artwork off your website, but it might make sense for you to divide your artwork into categories: my landscapes, my florals, still lifes. And even further, it might make sense, you know, if you've had some pretty dramatic change, you know, as you were just saying, over the last, you know, almost 15 years, maybe I also need to separate it out in terms of I'm going to have my older pieces in a kind of archive section, and I just want to keep the main focus of this website on my consistent work and on my recent work. I want to be directing a little bit what my potential buyers are seeing, and so what can I do to direct that focus and keep them looking at my best, most current work. You know, and by doing this initial editing and taking the website back to maybe just something that's, you know, maybe it's only 40 or 50 or 60 images instead of hundreds of images, I'm going to be hopefully generating more interest in the work that's most sellable. And then if, you know, after getting that done, maybe a year from now or 2 years from now, then maybe you can start thinking about, well, do I want to develop a second line? For most artists, this is not going to be something that you're going to want to pursue. You know, multiple websites, multiple portfolios, because it's just, you know, it's hard enough to make a career as a successful artist, as one successful artist, let alone trying to maintain multiple brands, multiple identities of your art. Let me try another audible question. Let me try and go to Sharon Ottstott. Sharon? Oh, hold on just a second, Sharon. I think I just pushed the wrong button. Oh, where'd you go? I had you there for a second. I'm sorry. There we go. Sharon, are you there, and do you have a question? Oh, and then it looks like we don't have a good connection, Sharon. I apologize. If you want to try typing that question in, I will try and get to that. Let me go to Lynette Meeson. Lynette, are you there, and do you have a question? There we go,
yes,
Lynette.
I'm here.
We've got you loud and clear.
Okay. I typed in the question, are gallery owners looking not just necessarily for consistency, but just unique styles or something that they don't already have in the gallery?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is yes. Consistency is only one of several different criteria that we're going to be looking at. Obviously, it's critical that the quality be there, that there be a unique, you know, something that's unique in terms of style. You know, I'm not looking for 27 different artists who are doing exactly the same thing. I want to give my collectors some variety. But even though all those other factors come into play, the quality, the uniqueness, all those you know, questions of you know, is the work the right scale for what I'm looking for? Those are all factors. But this question of consistency can really be a, you know, can almost have veto power over everything else. Yes, the other work is good quality. Yes, it is unique. But if I don't see enough consistent work in this artist's portfolio, that can prevent me from agreeing to show the artist's work. I've got to feel like, again, that I'm going to see that return on the investment. Let me go to a couple of the, boy, I've just got a lot of great questions here. And just give me a moment to look through some of these. Okay, this question comes from Dune Tensor, who says, I am trying to create a series of 10 or so paintings in a certain style or theme, and then move on to another and another theme, but keep consistent in terms of color. I find that people who visit my studio tend to like different pieces. Some like the abstract, while others are drawn to the landscapes. To become consistent, I try to use the same bright color palette. On the website, I have separated them on different pages. I would refer to this kind of as a little bit of the shotgun approach that, if I give people more variety, I've got a better chance at catching more of them. In most cases, and again, Dune, I'm not having seen your work, I can't speak to exactly, the differences in your style. I prefer, though, in the gallery to take more of a rifle approach. I feel like I'm going to be more successful selling, and casting a pretty narrow net to try and catch that buyer who's going to be perfect for that for your style. I would rather have 10, well, you just mentioned the number 10, so I should be careful of that, but I'd rather have a consistent stream of work from you in one style where I can start having the same people come back year after year after year and buy more of that work. And again, it's going to be evolving. They don't want to see exactly the same work year after year after year, but if they can see the consistent style, our best buyers are those people who come back again and again, and a lot of our volume in terms of sales happens to repeat buyers. And so rather than trying to catch a person here and there because I have a variety of different styles, I would rather be focused in on letting those people who have bought from me or who are going to be interested in a particular style have that very strong, consistent body of work to come back to. So, again, I wouldn't want to give advice not having seen your work at all, but just think about, would I be better off by having all landscape or all abstract work if it allowed me to sell more repeatedly to those clients who have bought from me in the past. And it looks like a lot of the questions kind of come in the same veins, and we're quickly running out of time here. Let me see if I can just take one more live question. Jermaine Trenery, are you there, and do you have a question? Oh, Jermaine, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, I am sorry, Jermaine. It looks like we've got a little bit of feedback going there. If you wanted to we've run out of time for typing in questions too. Let me take one more typed question. This comes from Laurie Adams. She says, I have been painting figurative representational work, muted colors, loose brush strokes, and I'm still painting the figure, but abstracting it, loosening the edges, adding line. I've just gotten into a new gallery that wants this work, while the other galleries I am in have the more traditional representational work. Is this a problem? And if so, should I paint the newer work under a different name or just go with one direction or another? And I think this kind of looks like we've had a number of you with the same kind of question. What do I do when my style really starts to change? Lori, again, not seeing your work, I would hesitate a little bit to have you take on the pseudonym and really move in a different direction unless the work is just really, really different. It sounds like it's figurative work, and so maybe you can tie that together. I would maybe just, for the meantime, on your website, you separate it into the two different categories, the two different styles. And you're probably not going to have an issue in terms of crossover with your various galleries if they're in different marketplaces. So hesitate before you go to that extreme. If you find that you're tending to move more and more toward the the looser, more abstract work, kind of just let that evolution occur if that's what you're most excited about. And it may be that your other galleries come along with you. It may be that in the long term they decide that you're no longer a good fit. But do what you're excited and passionate about, and that's going to lead to long-term success. And you'll start to get feedback from the market as well. I guess this is a point where an artist might start to feel a little bit trapped if they're excited about the new work, the looser abstract work, and continue to sell the other work very, very well. And it's just kind of a process of finding the medium where you can say, well, how much time am I willing to devote to the older style when I'm not interested in doing it anymore, as opposed to, I've got to put the food on the table. So, in the end, kind of see what the market will bear in terms of the new work, and see if you continue to be interested in it. I wouldn't go to the extreme of splitting your personality and having to create the pseudonym and separate the work, unless it comes to a point where you really do start to see conflict and your buyers saying, we're confused, are you this traditional artist that we bought and loved, or are you an abstract artist? And when you start to see that conflict, then it'll be time to make the decision. And I'm afraid we are out of time. It is 5 o'clock in Arizona. But I do want to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to participate in this question. Again, consistency is such an important principle. Of all of the principles that I can point artists to, there are kind of two cornerstones for really taking your professional career to the next level. Production is one, just starting to get that body of work put together and putting some miles on the paintbrush, or doing the thousands of sculptures that you need to, getting experience, so to speak. And then the second one is this question of consistency, and they're certainly interlocked and interact with one another. But I would encourage you to evaluate your consistency, and again, if you can get an objective opinion of the consistency of your work, and just start thinking about what you can do to create stronger and more cohesive work to create this brand. And we're going to be doing another broadcast next month where I talk a little bit more about branding and starting to convey this consistency to your collectors in your marketing messages and the emails that you're sending out and the postcards. But that is a topic for another day. But it starts with this question of consistency. Thank you again so much for spending the evening with me, and I look forward to having you all in future broadcasts. As I mentioned, the recording of this podcast will be available on the blog within the next couple of days as it goes through processing. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to being in touch soon.